Now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague and esteemed researcher, Dr. Angela Neal-Barnett, to you. Dr. Neal-Barnett is a professor of psychological sciences, director of the program for research on anxiety disorders among African Americans, PRADA, at Kent State University. She is truly a leading researcher, and another word I don't take lightly. She, in my view, is a visionary. She's a visionary in terms of her research and a visionary in terms of how she sees research impacting our society. Her focus has been on the mental health of underserved populations with an emphasis on anxiety and trauma-related disorders. Her latest efforts center around Black perinatal mothers in particular, who may be suffering from PTSD, other mood anxiety disorders that we know can lead to markedly increased preterm births, infant mortality, maternal morbidity, and mortality. And through her Spirit of Motherhood initiative, funded by the Anthem Foundation and the Char and Chuck Fowler Family Foundation, pregnant Black women and their families receive a multi-level intervention for PTSD. That's really been remarkable. Dr. Neal-Barnett is the author of Soothe Your Nerves, The Black Woman's Guide to Understanding and Overcoming Anxiety, Panic, and Fear. And she's also the recipient of the Webby People's Voice Award and a regional Edward R. Morrow Award for her exceptional contributions to the podcast, Living for We. She's been recognized multiple times for her work and its impact, including receiving the 2020 Geraldine Ross Clinician Advocate Award from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, the 2000 American Psychological Association's Kenneth and Mamie Clark Award, as well as Kent State's Outstanding Research and Scholar Award in 2020, and the Presidential Faculty Excellence Award in 2022. So we truly acknowledge and very much value what work she's been doing. Dr. Neal-Barnett received her BA from Mount Union College, for any of you who might be alums, and her BA and PhD from DePaul University. Great pleasure to welcome Dr. Neal-Barnett to give this year's public keynote lecture. Please join me in welcoming her.
In my house sits this chair. It is the chair I use to sing and rock my daughter to sleep. It is the chair that my mother used to rock her 6 babies to sleep. And it is this chair her grandmother rocked my granddaddy and all 10 of his siblings. More so than houses or land or money, this chair is my daughter's inheritance. But I don't know if she'll ever use it. For my daughter, who is the child of an MPA and a PhD, and will receive her law degree in May, is 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, and her child is 3 times more likely to die before their first birthday than a white woman with a high school diploma.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. If that mockingbird don't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. If that diamond ring turns brass, Mama's gonna buy you a looking glass. If that looking glass gets broke, Mama's gonna buy you a billy goat. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird.
I never intended to be a maternal health researcher. It was 2016, and my daughter was away at college, and I was spending my time sitting on the deck drinking Moscato, and golfing. And then the founder of Birthing Beautiful Communities knocked on my door. Everybody said, I should come see you, she said. I'm the founder of a doula agency, and the people who are evaluating this program tell us that the women are not stressed. But when they talk to us, they sound stressed. So we think the researchers are wrong. Black babies are dying, she said. Can you help us? So I checked my tea time and said yes. How long could it take? Well, it's now 2024. Haven't seen the deck. Moscato's still in the fridge, and the golf bag is straight up missing. But what I haven't missed is that mental health, and the mental health particularly of pregnant and postpartum Black women, plays an enormous role in infant mortality and maternal morbidity. And one of the reasons that these rates stay so high is because we don't routinely screen for anxiety or depression or trauma. And we don't recognize that mental health impacts physical health. So that anxiety and trauma can affect the uterine lining, constricting it, so that a Black woman cannot carry the baby to term. Or that depression can affect the placenta. In fact, among depressed Black women, the placenta can become detached, endangering the life of both the mother and the child. And anxiety and stress certainly raise one's blood pressure, and that contributes to preeclampsia. And when it is clear that a Black woman has a mental health disorder, she's usually referred to a place that she doesn't want to go and is seen by a person that she has no interest in seeing. My lead doula, Miss Deb, puts it this way: what they fail to understand is that these women have safety issues, issues around transportation, issues around food, issues around housing. And when you are not safe, whether or not you make an appointment just doesn't really matter. Listen to Black women. Whenever I say this, someone always says, Dr. Angela, we should listen to all women. That may be true, but what I've found is that when we listen to all women, inevitably, it is the voices of Black women that get lost. And so, in the beginning, what my team did, we spent a lot of time listening to Black women. We listened to their words, and we listened to what their bodies had to say. The first, by the way, is easier than the second. And so that's where I'll begin, was by sharing with you what it is that we heard. First, we heard that these women were so proud to be strong Black women. Even though they knew that in keeping on, that they should stop. But they couldn't do that Because as they explained, if we stop, we have to think about everything else. And that is just too overwhelming. And so, in that overwhelmingness, what we heard was stress and anxiety. And it turned out these women were really stressed. Okay. But the disconnect came because the researchers were using a standard instrument that historically has underestimated the stress of Black women. So now that we knew that they were stressed, we just couldn't leave them. I mean, we could just write it up, publish it, and have been done. But that's just not the way I roll. So we developed sisters offering support, sister circles, an intervention for maternal stress and anxiety. And we trained the doulas to deliver the intervention. Okay? And the very first thing we do in this intervention is we get them to take off their capes, to stop being strong Black women and just listen to each other. So Sisters Offering Support uses Soothe Your Nerves, the Black Woman's Guide to Understanding and Overcoming Anxiety and Panic and Fear as the guidebook. And we know that the gold standard in treating anxiety and stress is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. So what we do is we integrate CBT into the sister circle via storytelling and theme songs and action planning and yoga, which is a form of mindfulness. We listen to Black mothers, and they listen to each other. And a bond is formed between the sisters in the circle, and their stress and anxiety is reduced. And what we heard as we listened, time and time and time again, was, "What? You mean this as a name?" We just thought it was the way it was supposed to be. Imagine that the way it is supposed to be is to be racked with anxiety and fear. But before we could even consider, and the other thing we heard as they came to trust us was trauma. So before we could even consider what to do with all of that, it turned out that while we were listening to Black women, people were listening to us. And we were approached by the Sisters of Charity, who offered us a grant to work with perinatal Black mothers in another area of Cleveland. So by that time, I didn't even consider the tea time. Okay. Black babies and their mothers were dying. And the women who survived were powerless. And Prada and our team had the knowledge and the skills that were empowering pregnant and postpartum Black women. And so we knew that what we were doing was critical to reversing the trend. And so we said yes. This time, we not only listened to Black women, but we also listened to what their bodies had to say. And we did this by collecting hair cortisol. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone, and hair cortisol is a measure of chronic stress. And stress starts in the brain. So stress starts in the brain with the hypothalamus, which is at the top of the brain. And the hypothalamus is, for those of you who didn't take Psych 101, the hypothalamus is the thermostat of the brain. And the hypothalamus says to the pituitary gland that sits at the back of the brain, hey, we're stressed, we better start secreting some things. And the pituitary gland says to the adrenal gland, which sits right above the kidneys, okay, stress is here. Let's start secreting cortisol. Okay. That's the brain health definition, explanation of what's happening. Okay, so now let me just give you the Black woman's version of what's happening. Okay, so it's a lot like what happened when my daughter turned 16. I threw her the keys to the SUV and I went down to the dealership and I bought myself a grown woman's car. Okay? So now for those of you who do not know, let me give you the psychological definition of a grown woman's car. It only holds grown-ass people. Okay? Okay, moms, you know what I'm talking about. How many years did you hold dance bags, instruments, food, more food? No, grown woman's car. I drove that baby off the lot, popped the top, wheeled it onto 77 South, and I drove 77 miles at 77 miles per hour, okay? At the 78th mile, the car started making noise. At the 79th mile, steam rose from the engine. And at the 80th mile, the car just stopped. I had driven it so hard and so far that I had burned out the engine. And that's what happens to pregnant and postpartum Black women in the face of unrelenting chronic stress. And the most frequent chronic stress is racism in all of its forms. Okay, so you get these women who are facing racism and all other types of stressors on a daily basis. And at first, the cortisol is high, okay? But at some point, it can't go any further. And it becomes what is known as blunted or low, okay? And blunted cortisol is indicative of anxiety and trauma. And really high cortisol is indicative of depression. So now, knowing that, let's look at what these women's bodies were saying. Okay. So you can see that we have these women who were in their their second or third trimester of pregnancy. And they talked about maltreatment because of race and their experiences with racial microaggressions. And we also know that pregnancy increases cortisol rates, so that we had to do some calculations to see what exactly was going on. Okay. And what exactly was going on was trauma. And I'm just going to share some of the trauma themes that these women talked about. So here's a woman who talks about just her upbringing, that we are children born from children of the crack epidemic. We did not get love. We did not get support. We did not get guidance. We did not get nurturing. HCC stands for hair cortisol, okay? Concentration. And that number you see is quite low. It would be considered blunted. Okay? And here's another one. Here's another woman. As soon as I had her, speaking about her child, I came home. I hear a whole shooting. It's coming around the front. I'm telling my daughter to duck down off the couch because the window's right here. I hear shooting from the back, and my couch is right in front of the window. And I'm just like, I can't live out here. Another example of blunted cortisol. And then the interplay of racism and trauma. I was concerned about my newborn baby's weight, and I asked the doctor about it. He said, well, maybe if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, she wouldn't be so little. Or woman was talking about pregnancy and their hair and their skin, and how she had to fight every day just to look the way that she wanted to look. And this is particularly important because when you are a Black woman and you are pregnant, the strong recommendation is that you not alter your hair, okay? And if you can't, because of the chemicals that are in the alteration process. And so if you cannot alter your hair, you can't just simply wear it natural. And even if you have a natural hairstyle, it takes a lot to maintain, particularly when you are pregnant. So whatever she was doing was not sanctioned where at the place of business. Okay. And then our final one, when I had my set of twins and was finally able to sleep, a doctor came in and said, all you people want to do is sleep. And when we look at the cortisol levels and we look at what these women are saying with our voices, we know that we knew that what we next had to do was to develop something for post-traumatic stress disorder. And out of that research, the Spirit of Motherhood was born. So the Spirit of Motherhood is a 3-component project that addresses not only the mother, but the family. So the three components, first of all, are a 5-session written exposure intervention for PTSD. And one of the questions people ask me is that, well, Dr. Angela, trauma is not PTSD. And that is true. So I have a really fantastic team, and they do PTSD interviews with all of the women. So all of the women that we treat with written exposure therapy or WET have PTSD. Okay. And then from the written exposure therapy, we offer a stress parenting program. And why parenting? Well, the research says that parenting is an effective treatment for PTSD. And many of these women never, ever learned to parent. So we have WET, which is delivered by graduate students who are also licensed counselors. We have the stress parenting program, which is delivered by our doulas. And then we have a music intervention for the mothers and their infants that reinforces what is learned in each parenting session. And many of these women also have preschool children. So we have a separate music intervention program for the preschoolers. The entire program is embedded within the community. And one of our current sites is the Canton YWCA. During the pandemic, we had to work telehealth. And yet, even though we were working remotely, the program was effective. I have a great team. I cannot say this enough. I have doulas and community health workers and counselors and graduate students and professors and undergraduates, all who are either Black or biracial. Okay. So, I don't want you to think that all of this is easy. So I'm going to share with you my failure story. Okay. So parenting research is not my area of expertise. So I thought it would be better to bring in a parenting expert to listen and collaborate with the community experts. But in doing so, I failed to listen to the voices of Black mothers who continue to tell us that if they had had previous mental health experience, they had stopped after one session because the therapist wasn't of the same race, or they thought they weren't listening to them, or they feared that their children would be taken away from them. So when I brought in the parenting experts, those old fears resurfaced. And just to put it plainly, it didn't work. I, who am always going on about listen to Black women, did not listen. Because if I had, I would have realized that the trust we had engendered was specific to us and not anyone else brought in. So there were some difficult conversations, but we learned from the mistakes and we used them to grow and to expand. And the spirit of motherhood really has been successful. We've reduced PTSD symptoms by 50 to 100%. We've enhanced parenting skills, reduced parenting stress by 25%, and more importantly, we've listened to Black women. They trust us. They trust us to the point where they ask for more ways to be involved in the caring for their mental health. That's the beauty of partnering with the community, working together with them as experts. Things get done, and they get done in a way that makes a difference. Black pregnant and postpartum women want what all mothers want for their babies. Better for their babies than they had for themselves. Better maternal mental health helps make that an achievable reality. Hush, little baby. Don't say a word.
Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird.
In my house sits this chair, and it is my hope that the work I shared with you today and continue to do ensures that my daughter and her daughter's daughter will use this chair to rock their babies to sleep.